Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sonic Talk. This is number 293, going out live today, Wednesday, the 28th of November. Gosh, on the cusp of December. Even though I have been seeing Christmas trees everywhere, it feels a little bit premature. I'm Nick Batt, editor of SonicState.com. That'll be me there. And I'm very pleased to have a fulsome number of people with us. But first, a big hello to those in the chat room. Oh, we've got a very full chat room this week. Thanks very much for listening. If you haven't, if you're wondering what is this chat room, then please come to sonicstate.com/live at around 4 p.m. on UK time, where we've got a live video stream of this and also a chat room, so you can participate. In fact, the chat room is our kind of giant turbo brain, so if ever we're stuck for facts, then they very often help us out with the details that we're searching for. So let's just come straight in. We'll start with, let's see, we'll have Gaz Williams over there, because Gaz is there. Hello, Gaz Williams, and I've changed your lower third. Look, you've got your gold star and the songsurgeon.co.uk. Gaz Williams, of course, bass player, producer, engineer, technologist type person. How are you, Gaz?
Oh, yeah, I'm really happy. Thank you very much.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. It's been one of those good days today. Lots of good things happening today, so I'm very pleased, and I hope it's the same all round. Anyway, Gaz, nice to see you there. Is there something going on up there? Have you got some kind of there's some baffling or something just above your head? Is that new?
This here?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's just the
cupboard doors are open.
It's just an SM Pro mic thing.
Ah, right, yes, gotcha. Okay, well, anyway, Gaz, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll move on to our next guest. We'll go over to Dave Spears, GeForceSoftware.com. There you go, Dave. How are you, Dave? Dave is in his new place, looking a little bit ragged around the edges, if you don't mind my saying. So have you been given the runaround for your internet connection? I've been following your tweets saying, oh, my God, they've messed it up. But we finally got you. We've tracked you down. I'm guessing the satellite truck arrived okay then, yeah?
No, it's very long and very complicated and very boring, so I won't go into it.
Okay.
This may not last for the entire show, but let's try it.
Well, that'll be quite interesting. Gives us an added frisson, I think, is what we're looking for.
Yeah, just keep you on your toes.
Yeah, well, as well as the live audience, we've got a potential internet connection going down, but there's always the opportunity of that, because we can have Skype bad weather as ever, can't we? So that's just the way it goes. And anyway, we'll go back. We're going to leap over to the other side of the pond, and we're going to say hello to Mr. Richard Hilton, who we haven't seen for ages, since in fact Hurricane Sandy and before. So we're glad to see you there, Rich. And perhaps if you speak, I can then guess which window you're going to go into. But
hello.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
There he is, Rich Hilton, there in all his glory. And thanks for joining us, Rich. And how have things been? I'm guessing you have your power and you have your kind of amenities back and all of those things. So I'm glad to know that.
Well, I'm glad to know it too for now.
Oh, is it very up and down?
Well, it's the third time in about 14 months that we went a week or more, or nearly a week without power due to a storm.
Wow.
So it's time to plan for.
Going to be buying a generator for Christmas then?
Well, I don't know. Well, yeah, or as soon after Christmas as we can swing it. Yeah.
Wow. I guess sales of generators must be going through the roof around.
Oh, there are times you have to drive like 1,000 miles to get one.
Wow.
Kind of thing. During those down times when everybody's not got power, they're very valuable commodities, apparently.
Yeah. So what's it going to be? A generator and some kind of satellite internet connection and a big pile of logs?
Well, yeah, that sounds good. There's something like that. I'm not quite all the way into survivalist mode yet.
No,
There's a television show here about people who are preparing for, Armageddon all the time. And I'm not that guy.
I'm glad to hear that, Rich. That's a sort of fairly extreme place to be, and I hope it may stay that way. Anyway, Rich Hilton, of course, studio main man for Nile Rodgers in his private facility, and fully paid up member of the travelling disco. You call them the Disco Circus. I think it deserves a more higher praise than that. The disco band, the only disco band you'll ever need to see. Got any gigs over the New Year and Christmas, or do you tend to have that off?
Oh, no, we're about to embark on a whole lot of traveling right now. Between now and the end of the year, I'll go back and forth to Europe twice, and I'll spend a week in Japan.
Wow. Okay. Exciting times then.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad. I'm sure it'll be warm there anyway, at least. So you'll be out. I suppose you'll be out of. Not
Not
necessarily.
from what they tell me. No. From what
really?
they tell me. No.
Anyway, Rich, thank you very much for joining us. And we'll also go over to Mark Tinley, likebeing.com. If Mark speaks, I can guess his window too. And now in the...
Number 3.
Oh, it's not a lot. You need to speak more than that. What's going on? It's not switched.
That was
There we go. There he is. Mark Tinley. Mark Tinley, likebeing.com, sound artist, creative thinker, and general kind of technologist chap. Every week, a different hairstyle. I don't know how you do it. You must spend so much time at the stylist.
I've got a number of different hats, and when I wear different hats, my hair changes. I don't know.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for joining us anyway, Mark. And we've got it feels like all the gang is here, which is a nice place to be. So welcome everybody. Let's just get on. So the first item in the list is yes. How could you not want one of these? Assuming, of course, you have the finances available to hold out for it. This is the sort of beautiful, it's like the kind of artisan video of them making the Moog Voyagers. I don't think this is specific to the golden Moog Voyager. This looks like this is the sort of thing that they make, they just do anyway. I'm guessing this is in the sort of artisan workshop. This is the news of the 24 carat gold plated Voyager, 10th anniversary Voyager. Only 30 made. 15,000 bucks, and it looks like they've actually taken them off the site, so it looks like they've actually sold them all, although there is one up for competition grabs. You can win. I don't know if they sound any different. I shouldn't imagine so. I would just, I don't know what anybody thinks about this. I mean, would one feel comfortable with having one of those about the place? I mean, it seems a bit ostentatious in this in these times. I don't know. I'd like a Moog Voyager. And I suppose if it had to be gold, I'd take it if it really was the only one I could get. Rich, got a Moog?
Exactly.
Get one of these for Christmas?
No, but it's what you just said. I wouldn't kick it out of bed, but yeah, all right. I think I like it better than the white stuff.
I'm not sure about the white stuff. The white stuff looks all right. I did see a comment in our when I posted this that it said Ambassador, with these Moogs you are spoiling us, and it sort of did remind me a little bit of the Ferrero Rocher kind of packaging. I don't know why. I mean, that which isn't kind of perhaps the most, certainly in this country, it's not the most high budget chocolates that you can buy, but I don't know, maybe that's a little bit flippant. I don't know, Gaz.
I don't love the white stuff.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it. Gaz, what do you think? You going to get one?
I'm not going to get one, I don't think, but I would like one. I think I know a lot of people are thinking it's really a little bit gross, but I think it's quite good fun. I think it would look great on stage.
It could be a sort of private bling, couldn't it? Sort of thing that you only show, you only show kind of very you keep it in the toilet that guests don't generally get to see. It's only when people people really well that they would get to use that one, and that's where you keep your Moog so that people can see it. That's where you keep your gold discs as well.
I think if it was the old school, I'm sad they stopped making the old school. Actually, I thought that was a really appealing. I like the old school.
The old school Voyager.
Yeah. I don't know why they stopped making it. Maybe it just wasn't selling much, or maybe...
I don't know, but they seem to have a race on, and, it's just kind of variants and colouring and all that sort of thing. I mean, I don't know what the audience is for Moog owners, but I'm imagining that they might be selling multiples to various different people. I don't know, or maybe it's for stage work. I know, Dave, you probably know this. You're kind of... You swim with the synthesists, perhaps on a more regular basis. Perhaps you could inform us. No one is getting any of your clients getting one?
No, we bought them. All of them.
Wow.
No, that's a complete lie, of course. I suspect there'll be quite a lot of hip-hop artists really interested in this for the bling value, don't you think?
I am guessing that that's probably the case. I mean, it really is the sort of like, check out my Moog or check out my gold-plated MPC.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me a million years. In fact, the first time I ever went to America, it was somewhere in North LA, and a friend of my dad's used to fit out like jets, jumbo jets and stuff like that for Arabs. And I remember going to this airport and getting on one of these planes, expecting to be kind of blown away, but actually it all looked a little bit kind of bleh. So yeah, I like the white ones.
You do like that? Well, maybe that's the thing. Maybe what they need to do is they do one for everybody. So you just basically, they can do all these different ones, and then, you know, you can get whatever you fancy. And then they can resell them. So you can have a different one for different parts of your studios. You know, you have the white one for the very dark corner of your studio, and then maybe the dark one for the very light corner of your studio.
If you're a complete arse.
Yeah, maybe. I think I'm clutching at straws. But, I mean, they do sell very well. And the thing is, it's quite interesting about the way that the Moog thing, these special editions seem to work really well for them. And they can just kind of keep managing to keep sort of coming up with them. And people just seem to go for it, which is brilliant, really. Because it's sort of custom yet also, you know, mass, but not quite massively mass. I know, Mark, what do you think? Is... any of your clients going to be getting one, or past or present?
Let's see.
I suppose you can say whatever you like, really.
I'm going to spin back to the 1970s when I was but a small child, and I remember going to the bicycle shop and buying this fabulous spanner. It's 24 karat gold-plated spanner. And being able to mend my bicycle with it. But, of course, as soon as I started using it, all the gold plating came off, and I noticed that as they were building those things, that they were very carefully constructing it, wearing white cotton gloves. So I'm sort of thinking, well, how thick can you put gold onto the thing that you're plating? If it's anything like my spanner, I imagine that if anybody uses it in earnest, a bit of sweat at a gig, and you're going to have thousands of pounds of gold dripping off onto the floor, aren't you? So I don't think it's very practical personally, but...
Just out of interest, how much? What sort of a premium did you pay for your gold spanner?
Oh, I don't know. It was only a few pence more, actually. It wasn't massively expensive, but I don't think 24 karat gold. You know, they can put that on very thin, and I don't.
Yeah,
think
it's like a micron or something. I think they've put it on quite thick on this one.
Right.
It's been dipped.
Well, I think that I want a brass, copper, and mahogany Moog. So that's the one I want. Steampunk Moog. I think that would be really cool. I mean, having just watched that video, it seems that they could make that front panel out of absolutely anything. So why not brass, copper, and like the steampunk mahogany?
Actually, copper's probably more expensive at the moment.
I want it to look like something out of a Sherlock Holmes movie. So Moog, if you're listening, can I have one of those, please?
It'd be nice. It needs to have one of those kind of Bakelite telephone dials on it to do something or other, whatever that is.
Well, yeah, Bakelite knobs and copper and brass and weird wiggly wire things coming out everywhere. Yeah, that would be cool.
All right, well, I'll put you down for one of those, and I'm sure it will be coming along soon. But if you want, it, let me see. I think I've actually got I've got the page here that we can probably switch to. Yeah, the 10-year anniversary. You can enter the giveaway. They've got one to give away. If you already own a Voyager and you've registered your product, you've already been entered. So there you go. So I don't know whether that means they've made 31 or whether they've sold 29 and there's one left. I guess we can probably not worry too much about that. I'm sure we can figure it out.
Is this the one that's being raffled off for the Bob Moog Foundation, is it?
I don't think I'm not sure if it's a raffle or not, to be perfectly honest. I haven't done enough research to be able to answer that with any authority. But I'm sure the chat room would be able to help if anyone would care to find out. Maybe it's a separate one. Maybe they haven't. All right. Anyway, but if you want to
they'll have to be number stamped, won't they? Like 1 of 30 or whatever.
I would have thought so. Yeah, I would think that's exactly what
they're going to be really valuable.
Special edition. Here we go. Right. Next is this is pretty cool, or not. Depends on your opinion. The new Polysix app running on the iPad Maxi and Mini together. Gold-plated Polysix. Now, there's a thought. This is so fabulously cheesy, this track. It actually is a brilliant demonstration of... Yeah, great stuff. That's the news of the new Polysix iPad app, which I'm guessing is coming from the kind of legacy collection code that they did 10 years ago that they ported over to iPad World, which seems good. And if that's what it was, I mean, it sounded like it was fairly well hyped and mastered, but it did sound pretty good. I don't know. I don't know whether it's got MIDI or any of those things. I'm guessing, Gaz, you may have the scoop on this, being the co-host on Sonic Touch, which you can watch elsewhere on this network. What do you think, Gaz?
Looks great. And as with the other Korg apps like the IMS 20, it's not just simply a accurate recreation of the Polysix, but like a fully featured music production system in that there's a sequencer and
two-track polyphonic sequencer. You got 2 instances of the Polysix and a drum track. Yeah,
that's right.
And it's got whist apparently, which is the auto start stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, like, it makes the whist idea quite attractive. You know, if like you've got that on one and then IMS 20 on another one, and you know. You have an entire virtual collection of polyphonic analog. I want the monopoly next. The chat room are saying also it will run on iPad 1 apparently, though it's recommended on 2. I like the new term for iPad 1, which is iPad Vintage. I think that's great. The 2-year-old piece of hardware that's now become iPad Vintage. I think maybe Rich has got one of those. Something to save. But I was going to say they've also implemented their almost ubiquitous Chaos Pad type of.
Yeah, got a couple of those, hasn't it? It's got a couple of Chaos pads as well,
which you can use then as map to scales as a way of playing notes in and for anyone who's tried that with the IMS 20 is actually it's quite nice. It's quite good fun, you know. So I think as a package, and I believe it is half price at the moment.
$14.99 I saw in the App Store. I don't know whether that is the case.
It's I think it's half price at the moment, and in fact, I think all the Korg apps are down at half price at the moment as a promo period. So anyone in iOS land, I think, is a good time to get into the Korg stuff. But I would say that they are some of the best apps out there, and I think that
they've done a good job.
Haven't got it yet, but I will be getting it soon.
I input my code today, but I haven't had a chance to download it. The thing is, though, and I may be controversial about this, but I never actually. I mean, I know that it was a reasonably good price, but I remember everybody thinking the Polysix sounded pants for anything apart from just sort of string pads at the time, you know, amongst its peers. Am I imagining that? But I don't remember it being kind of.
You're not imagining it. It was rubbish.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for backing me up there. So
it did have the Juno 106 or the Juno range to contend with, didn't it? I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't remember it being particularly well thought of.
Shall I say what I think about it?
Yeah, I think you should.
It's horribly, horribly overpriced. Why is it so expensive? If it's half price at $14.99, why is it so expensive? If in the world of iApps, it's like way, way, way more than everything else. I bought Native Instruments iMachine yesterday for 69p. So why is this so expensive?
I don't know. I can only assume there was something. But it's because it's got 12 voices. So it's got more circuits in it.
There's small developers out there who are making stuff and putting it in the iTunes App Store for like much less money, who don't have. I mean, Korg just seem to be. I don't know. I guess they need to fuel their massive resources, do they, or what? I mean,
I don't know. But apps are trending upwards. I mean, I'm guessing. I mean, I did see some articles recently. There was something in the New York Times, which we get a supplement in one of the Sunday papers here, and it just basically said this whole kind of generation of people who thought they were going to make their living making apps are actually making nothing at all, and it sounds like familiar territory. I know. Dave Spears, synth nut. Have you got a Polysix? Would you have one in your collection?
No, I'm sorry. Sorry, this audio is really grim here. But if you ask whether I've got a Polysix, no, I haven't. And it kind of fell between the gaps. It fell through the gaps for me when it first came out. I think I was kind of lusting after the Prophet 5s, but living with Junos.
Yeah.
But I do remember, it's funny actually, because I do remember trying it out and thinking, because it had a unison mode, or it has a unison mode, which I remember thinking was very cool. And also the arpeggiator was pretty damn cool. But I mean, this is sort of very early 80s. In fact, it's weird because this demo of the iPad version, and I totally agree with Gaz, I like the Korg apps a lot, sounded better to me than the Polysix did years ago.
Like I said, it was pretty hyped. I remember the Polysix sounding a bit thin at the time. I mean, I maybe compared to the Juno, maybe that was it, because that was the contender. Rich Hilton is looking wonderfully skeptical there, so I'm going to have him come in and blow us all away, hopefully.
Well, curiously, I agree with almost everything that's been said, even some things that appear to be contradictory. But I loved the Polysix. I didn't think it sounded thin, but it didn't have a chorus built into it like the Rolands of the time. And once you put a chorus on it, it sounded wonderful. Just like the Rolands did. It's a single oscillator synth, and they both have very interesting sounding filters. And I really liked it, and I thought that this app sounded great, and I couldn't wait to go and look at it. And when I did, and I saw $15, I was horrified, as was Mark.
Right.
So I basically sort of, and as Gaz said, I like the Korg apps, and I use their software synths, and I think they sound really good. If I ever really have to have an M1 sound, I have it. You know, and I thought the MS-20, the IMS-20 was very cool, but $15 seems like a heck of a lot of money for a synth I'm never going to use in my iPad. That won't even run in my iPad.
I'm pretty sure the Polysix did have a chorus, actually, because I remember there was the Polysix chorus effect that got added to some of the stuff. But chorus and ensemble, the chat room is saying.
It was well benefited from some external beefing up, but ultimately I thought it was a really good sounding filter and some decent sounding oscillators. Wasn't terribly bright, but I liked it. In its day, I thought it was a really cool product for a good price point, and it competed well with other products that were much more expensive.
Not terribly bright. I like that. It's a sort of blonde synth of the time.
I think it had, what did it have, 8 memories or 32? I don't know. I think it had 8 memories or something.
I don't recall actually, but it did have memories, I suppose. So that's again something.
I remember it fondly. So. But
I never had one. I know Will Gregory Goldfrapp's got one, and I remember it was good. It's good for sort of skinny synth, skinny strings, from what I recall, and organ sounds. It did those too, those sort of chippy, sort of Grace Jones, Wally Badarou kind of nibbly synth organ sounds. If that's making any sense, or if I'm just using far too many descriptors. Anyway, you can buy it should you wish, and it's $14.99 at the moment. So, which people still seem to think is expensive, even at half price. So, yeah, buy it while you can. Definitely. Right. I guess now is probably as good a time as any to welcome our sponsor and say thank you to them, because obviously we wouldn't be able to have a sponsor without having this sponsor, and this is Yamaha, the world of apps. They've got a lot of iOS applications, over 20 available in the music category alone, and growing all the time. We've got performance and play mode. We've got ones with built-in arpeggiators, drum pads, sequencers, synth sounds. There's synth perform and play, which has just come out. That's not listed here in this as things for controlling performances on various synthesizers, Yamaha synthesizers, things like the voice effects, EQ, cutoff, resonance for the Motif XF, Mox, S90X, S70XS, Motif XS and Rack XS. You've got voice edit, you've got performance edit, multi-edit. It again allows you to sort of set the levels, the pans, the mixing, the EQs and the effects. There's a little bit of XY pad action on some of these as well. And this is the performance edit one. And not only that, but there's a whole bunch of other useful apps. One of the ones that we reviewed, which was Setlist, which I really enjoyed, allows you to set up notes and program changes for up to 5 devices, program and bank changes, and just sort of run it all. It's like this kind of multiple brain of a very comprehensive master keyboard. Record and share with cloud, audio recorder, and many more besides. I'm sure there are more coming too. So if you want to find out all about the world of apps, check out the Yamaha apps at the App Store or go to uk.yamaha.com. Anyway, thank you. Now, the next topic, we did the Polysix. Yes, Imogen Heap's gloves. Now, let's see if I can find these because, yes, here we go. 3 minutes with Imogen Heap. Let's see if I can just get that in there. That's this one here. I'll get a centralized. Oh, that's interesting. Doesn't seem to want to. Let me try that again. No, that's this one. Oh, well, we'll play it and see what happens. There we go. Here it comes. This was a 3-minute interview with Imogen Heap, who's talking about her kind of, she's got this kind of all over sensor body kit that just allows her to control lots of stuff on Ableton Live. In fact, we got another video of her actually using it at the Wired conference.
So briefly
she doesn't take...
It's see-through, and I wanted you to be able to see, I wanted people to be able to see the tech. So we have here bend sensors. There's 2 on each finger. Here's my wedding ring. I'm wedded to my gloves. And then in here, I don't know if you can hear that. Can you hear that? That's my buzzer. So it's going zzz at the moment. And so they're all connected together, and then they go up my arm here, here, which is eventually going to be active as another sensor to give me a wireframe, but it's not ready yet. But at the moment, it's giving power to the lights. And then
I won't go over the whole thing, but this was just quite an interesting sort of focus on what Imogen's been up to. I didn't realise this, but later on in the video she says, they've actually got a whole company together and they're kind of working on developing the whole thing. So to allow kind of human gesture to control lots of stuff. And I know, Dave, you were a bit sceptical about this. In fact, I think I've got a quote for you. All that sensor tech basically boils down to a filter sweep or two, followed by an example of terrible gain structure at the end, which I thought was a bit cruel, but perhaps you're right. I mean, do we need all of this stuff? This sort of maybe ties in with some other topics later. But I mean, it's an interesting idea, the gestural stuff. I mean, but it looks like you have to be very devoted to be able to actually come up with anything meaningful with this.
I believe I was commenting about a video that was a year early with a very early incarnation of this technology. Thing is with Imogen Heap is whatever she does is always going to be exemplary. She's kind of muso's muso, isn't she?
Yeah.
I don't think the production value of everything she does is always brilliant, whether it's your bag or not. And actually, I've loved her work from the kind of Frau stuff onwards. So I've got nothing negative to say about it at all. But I'm not sure how this kind of gesture stuff really translates. I've sort of reached a weird situation. This 30 years of MIDI thing today has kind of made me realise there's been a big conversation.
Happy birthday, MIDI,
with a load of musos, and maybe actually instead of disappearing off down a load of cul-de-sacs and going, oh, this controller or that controller or this one, maybe it might have been an idea to actually learn to play an instrument incredibly well. But that's just my own personal experience.
Well, I can concur there, but it's quite interesting because there's quite a number of there's another topic where perhaps we can discuss that as well. But we did get an email from Diego Stocco, who is an occasional guest on the show, and he said he saw her at that show, and he saw a show because he was doing a presentation too at the Wired show in London. It seems very complex for her to perform, certainly not a traditional way of performing in front of an instrument, but it takes some serious time to tweak that system to do exactly what you want and learn to control it. It looks like she's dancing. She's got a set of moves that need to be done specifically in a certain way, otherwise she'll trigger unwanted MIDI events. Lots of things happen with hand gesture. So in fact, it almost seems like you might have to be restricted rather than freed in some ways. So that's the one thing that may be an issue. I don't know. I've always found contemporary dance certainly a little bit abstract when it comes to connection with music. I don't know what you think about this as a potential for to control. Mark, are you kind of interested in this sort of thing, or are there better ways of going about it?
I don't know if there's better ways of going about it. I know we talked about something a couple of weeks ago, and I think this really amounts to much the same thing. And that is, if you're going to get really innovative when it comes to designing and coming up with controllers for things, then that means there's going to be like a learning curve with learning how to use it as well. So there's that whole mastery over a violin. I think what Dave said is really relevant. Like if I took a violin, it's a conventional instrument. I could spend 30 years learning to master that violin and become an absolutely outstanding violinist. if I design the instrument from the ground up, so I've designed the technology from the ground up, how long does it take me to become a master of that technology? And if I'm constantly tweaking the technology, or if I'm moving with the technology curve, then I've got to kind of tweak my performance to go with that.
Yeah.
And I mean, like when you can find this out for yourself. All you've got to do is change your mouse or your laptop or the way you control from a trackball to a pointer or whatever. And when you first start using it, it's frustrating as hell and you can't find your way around your computer. And like within a few weeks, you'll find that if you go back to trying to type on another keyboard or I mean, I know this sounds banal, perhaps compared to musical performance, but it's the same kind of thing. It's about dexterity and teaching your body to do certain things.
Yeah.
And once you get used to something, then you can start to have some kind of
I wonder about that. I mean, it's interesting that you say, for instance, if you were learning to play an instrument like a violin over 30 years or whatever it took you, you'd still end up being asked to play, the Four Seasons. There's like maybe 4 pieces that you're probably going to get paid for playing regularly. Do you know what I mean? And in some ways, a lot of this stuff is about shortcuts to how we can come up with something convincing for a very specific purpose. And that's interesting. Maybe we can talk about that a bit further on later with
John Otway did it years and years and years ago, didn't he? He had like pads in his clothes and everything, and it's sort of like it just seems to me to be like an exponential kind of evolution of John Otway. So I'm starting to wonder if she might be related in some way.
The same sort of level of eccentricity. Yeah, perhaps you're right. I don't know, Gaz.
There's one thing that's really pertinent, though.
Yeah.
One thing that's really pertinent is that, and it kind of came out of a bit of a joke here, but actually I think it's really quite a serious thing, in that if you learn to play a violin, there's no way that a particular method of bowing is going to be deprecated. Whereas we could completely imagine, somebody investing in all this gear and then Apple or some company suddenly turning around and going, we're deprecating the pointing mode.
Yeah. Well, what was
So
that
wasted all of that.
That's true, but there was that thing that we saw that could read the position in front of the screen. I can't remember what it was now. Leap, yeah, the leap thing.
Yeah.
And so, this stuff is coming. So maybe there will be the ability. I mean, that's kind of maybe more akin to theremin side of stuff because there's no resistance other than air and position where you are. So it could be interesting. I know, Gaz, you've worked with sort of contemporary dance and what have you. Have you ever worked with anybody who's worn a suit like this and tried to kind of control the music? Has it ever been successful?
No, I haven't. I do think, though, that it is great in that it's from a performance point of view, it's wonderful because it relates. What you're watching relates to the sound you hear. I think, especially when she's doing it filtering and things. I thought that from a show business point of view, it's great, and I don't think you can underestimate that side.
Yeah, there were a few instances. There is a demo video where she sort of does this to open it and then pulls it all together, and it really, the sound reflects what her physical movements are doing, and that's quite interesting.
Now, I've had an interesting day today. I've spent the day with the Soundbeam people who make these kind of
they're really cool
sonic controllers. So it was someone, Chevy Travelers, was saying at EMS, and actually, the guy was involved. Soundbeam was involved in EMS, and actually, I spent a lot of the day playing on a VCS3 actually, but which is always fun. But I digress. The Soundbeam thing is quite cool, but they showed me a video which I really liked, and it was a guy who had some really terrible, I think, muscular dystrophy or something, and was in a motorized wheelchair and was playing a guitar solo by actually going backwards and forwards with the wheelchair within the Soundbeam playing, but actually being sustaining certain notes, doing little kind of runs, and just literally just driving backwards and forwards within the. I just thought it was really great to see.
I think undoubtedly, I mean, the sort of accessibility concept of a lot of this stuff is great. I mean, it's just the sort of nuance of the performance. I mean, you're learning this entirely new. I mean, it seems like Imogen Heap can make it cool and make it work, but how many Imogen Heaps are there? There aren't all that many, I guess.
That is true. I mean, I think with the Soundbeam example, for instance, I think that that was initially developed for creative dance, I think 25 years ago, thereabouts. But then they discovered actually that it's applications within, for people with either learning disabilities or physical disabilities. And the musical therapy aspect of it was actually a bigger market and a much stronger.
Right.
And
I've
pretty
got a
much,
friend who works in one of those hospitals, and they've got loads of sound beam stuff, and it's really like quite amazing. All these like light tubes and stuff as well.
yeah.
So
So
just kind of, there's people who can't do any kind of movement at all, and they just kind of throw them in the light beam, or put them in the light beam.
There is also another system. It's called Infusion Systems that you can buy. I think I've got. I don't know if I opened it. I might be able to open the catalog here and drop it over here, and then we can have a look at it. Let me see.
Could you imagine trying to get it through airport security?
Yeah, that would be tricky. There, Touch Glove L version 1.7. So it's one glove, $360, and it's probably got. I mean, I'm not sure what interfacing it would have, but you'd have to turn it into. Well, I guess it's possible you would turn it into MIDI. I suppose. I don't know, Rich. Is this does this have any influence on your world, or is it kind of? Do you think there could be any spin-offs? In the same way that NASA technology has given us the ballpoint pen and non-stick frying pans, or the musical equivalents. Is there anything like this that's gonna work, filter down to us? Could you see possibly?
Maybe. I agree again with almost everything that's been said. I find imaging fascinating in general, as a musician and as a artist, and this could be pointing towards something that will ultimately be an extremely expressive environment into which somebody will produce something magical. It hasn't yet, from what I've seen, but it could, and I admire her for going there. But the history of alternate controllers is sort of littered with failed attempts on the side of the road, and it's difficult for the reasons that Mark described, which is that nobody puts 30 years into it. They invent something and try to become a virtuoso on it in the first 2 years, and the only thing I can think of that hasn't been that way really is a Chapman stick.
Yeah.
Where people have continued to play the Chapman stick. And before that, the last thing I can think of was the theremin, which didn't exactly catch on in the way that Bob Moog had hoped, but still is a very interesting instrument. And people have devoted like lifetimes of practice towards getting good at it, and you can see the results. And so as these things develop, there may come to be results that are worthy of our admiration.
there's an interesting point there with the Eigenharp, the big Eigenharp, the Alpha.
Yeah.
Because I had the Pico, the little one, a few years back, and part of the thing about that was to try and create like a controller that's going to take a lifetime to master. But I looked on YouTube just to see now it's been out for a few years, just to see what people were doing with it. But
there's not a lot of stuff going on. In fact, Imogen Heap was one of the kind of poster children of the Eigenharp, the original, and I haven't seen her using it a whole bunch. I mean, yes, I agree. And that was a very strange project. I mean, it must have cost millions of pounds. But there are a couple of still people evangelizing it. But it seems to me it's going contrary to what everybody else is going. It's going in completely the opposite direction to what everybody else is attempting to do with technology, which is make everything more accessible. And that kind of leads on to the next question, which is, if that's the case, what will we need to excel at to be to stand out? Because if everything is being sort of not dumbed down, but made more and more and more accessible, then how are we actually going to kind of be any good at stuff other than, I'm really good at playing the fake trumpet on the iPhone? Or do you see what I mean? I'm very good at approximating things, given the technology that is enabling me to approximate things with great ease. How am I going to stand out?
I don't think it's going to be a case of good, is it? Because if you have like the mixer we had last week, the Line 6 mixer, which gives you the perfect live sound because it's got all the presets and it does the vocal in exactly the right way to produce, your modern or whatever contemporary vocal sound, and your guitar sounds exactly as it should and everything else. It's not going to be a case of better. It's going to be a case of actually finding ways to make, because I could go into a massive rant about synthesizers, actually. I mean, synthesizers, ever since I first saw one up until now, have all sounded roughly the same. And we set out to try and make sounds that sounded like real orchestral instruments, and then we discovered that they made their own kind of noises, and it always seems to include VCF, or low-pass filtering, resonance, LFOs, and then maybe a bit of sample and hold. All those kind of elements go into like our classic synth sounds, right? But surely synthesizers could do so much more if somebody just thought about new ways of connecting them up. So it's got to be, somebody's got to step outside of the way that everyone else is doing it and create something radically different.
Well, isn't that what modular synthesis is? I mean, I've been using the modular synth a little bit recently because I've hooked up the Max 49 Akai keyboard, which has got CV and gate out. I just sort of fired it up, and I've oh look, I can plug the, that's what I do with that. I mean, but those systems are more niche. I mean, as soon as you're making an instrument that is intended for larger consumption, then you have to kind of simplify to a degree, or have to do things that make things easier so that people can just kind of go, hey, I've got a great sound out of it. So I mean, it's not. I think I take your point. Certainly, and one thing that it's gone past now. As you had said in the chat room, that maybe what we should do is excel at making music again instead of messing around, which is a very good point.
TC11 on the iPad, I think, is so different from anything else out there in terms of just a completely different approach. Saying that, the actual underlying synthesis is not that different, but the way that you interact with it, I've never seen anything quite like it. So,
right. Well, maybe it's going to work then. I don't know. It's just I don't know whether or not any of this stuff is going to be of any use. I mean, what do you think about that, Rich? The fact that obviously we still are going to need people to play in bands live or what have you, but it seems to me that the difference between the process and the actual ability is diverging, not converging. So it's just that violin you played was beautiful, but listen to this amazing piece of electronic music or production or approximation of something complicated I've done on my phone.
Well, I'm not sure about that, and here's a couple of reasons why, and it feeds into your question and the point I was making a minute ago. The most recent controller style that I see taking hold that is actually showing some results is button pushing.
Right.
And that would include Machine, the Ableton controller, the Novation controller, and various things like that. And I see certain people getting absolutely remarkable results out of the button pushing music making process, which is completely foreign to the techniques I grew up with and learned, but it doesn't preclude it as a means by which to make music. And that gets to my point about you are a musician in your body, and that's the physical actions that you take in order to bring about the music that is the music of your mind. And they're separate pursuits. There are people with tremendous amounts of musicianship who don't have a lot of technique, and that's the best example I can give of the difference between being a musician of the body and a musician of the mind. So nothing precludes an extremely musical person from assuming a role like Imogen's trying to do right now and becoming extremely expressive within that medium. And she's made some good strides. That wasn't a bad performance at all. And it did produce some interesting and surprising results, which is sort of what she was after. And she's fun to watch anyway. So it was all cool and everything. But so you've got the musician of the body and mind issue. And then you've also got what happens in the democratization of the process and what kind of results happen. And that feeds into Mark's point about how people don't practice for 30 years to get really, really good at stuff anymore. They just kind of pick them up and start doing it. And that democratization of the process does lead to certain kinds of results that have become much more pervasive in our society and might have something to do with why every year's Grammy Awards show is all about stuff that happened 40 years ago.
And why that beautiful castle in your hometown that you drive past every day is no longer made of stone by a mason, but is a fiberglass molding, right?
Right, exactly, yeah. It's the painted styrofoam.
Yeah, the shop fitter kind of approach, the set building, that kind of concept.
Exactly.
It's interesting. and perhaps something we can discuss more widely. We've got a couple of topics left that I was hoping to get to as well. The first of all is obviously the Rich. This is one that you popped in, which was the new Chromebooks, and this kind of really blew me away a little bit actually because I hadn't really noticed. But if we go to here, that Google have announced these new Chromebooks. There's a couple of them. They're under $200. And although, yes, it's just some technology, it could be a very interesting again, another challenge. It's got all sorts of features that you don't get for more money on things like iPads or what have you, because you've got multiple logins, you've got all of these things. I know, Rich, maybe you could chip in first, because, I mean, you brought this up. I mean, what is it that kind of caught your eye about this announcement?
It's something that looks like a MacBook Air, rather, for about $250.
Yeah.
And provides certain functionality, but is not a full-on laptop. And what it really is a cloud portal. And it's the first product I can recall of its kind that is specifically designed to be nothing really more than an enhanced browser environment.
Thin client, I think they call it in computing terms, or used to anyway. But yeah, it's not too bad. I mean, it's got like it's an ARM processor, dual 1.7 gigahertz. So it's not too shabby. A couple of gigs of RAM, 8 gigs of local storage, and it's all non-moving parts. So it boots up in like 7 seconds, and the battery life is hours and hours and hours, and it's got a webcam and it's got various other things. I mean, I don't know whether it'll become a viable platform for maybe real-time stuff in terms of music making. I mean, that's another question. But
well, no, and I don't see it that way, and that's why I don't see it as a laptop. It's really just sort of it assumes a few things, that most people's lives are contained within a browser window on a computer.
Yeah.
And that their cloud services are so comprehensive that they can supply you with pretty much everything you need to be able to use this thing in any environment in which you can connect 3G, and why only 3G, or Wi-Fi up to N speed.
Yeah.
So for the money and for what it offers, it presumes a few things, but it's really a pretty amazing amount of services for $250.
I would agree, and of course it also run Flash, so your kids can play Friv and all of that kind of stuff that they tend to go on, all their kind of Moshi Monsters and all that kind of nonsense, which you'll know about if you've got kids. Is it going to make a difference, Mark? Do you think it would be good enough for you to stop borrowing your partner's laptop and get yourself?
Oh God, I don't know.
I wonder if I wonder if it would actually work.
I've got VMware on my MacBook Pro, and I'll say that again. I tried downloading the Google Chrome OS. Which I think, and I might have this wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a flavor of Linux, Google Chrome
Probably
OS.
Something like that, yeah. Most of these are.
And then the other thing I was playing around with was Ubuntu, which is also another flavor of Linux, which they're very similar, but I don't know. I mean, it's just... What happened to the sub $100 laptop that they were trying to develop for India? Because
it's out.
Is it out?
It's out, is it?
Oh, yeah, it's been out. I think they're working on the second one, and yeah,
it's happening. Well, I don't know. I think it could be.
How does this compare to it? Sorry,
it's a completely different thing.
Is it? Okay.
The Zoe was developed specifically for inhospitable areas. They designed the Zoe as well to be unappealing, to make it look very much like a children's product as well, so to stop people stealing them.
Oh, right, okay.
A monochrome screen as well, and that you can view.
Oh, so totally different kind of thing. I mean, this thing's cool, isn't it?
I think it could be. I mean, I was thinking about it from my point of view. I mean, I could quite easily do most of the stuff that I need to do on it apart from video editing.
Regarding that OS conversation, Mark, there are two different OSs. There's the Google Chrome OS and there's the Chromium OS. Now, they may both be based in Linux, but you can't download Google Chrome OS. The only way you get that is to buy one of these devices. Well, no, you can apparently download Chromium.
You can find it if you look in the right places.
All right,
I didn't
okay.
tell you that.
It runs on an ARM processor. I'm sure it's possible to do that kind of stuff. But yeah, Okay, it could be a bit of a game changer because Google definitely, they've got the 159 quid tablet, the Nexus, and then you've got these laptops which are just dirt cheap, really, by most standards, and will be adequate for most purposes. So yeah, it could be. I mean, I don't know whether there's going to be much in the way of music that can happen on them. I did actually find this Jam with Chrome thing. I don't know if you've seen that. It's kind of bonkers. This is just HTML5. So you pick an instrument, and I'm not sure what will happen here if I play this. So I can go into Pro mode. It's a bit laggy, but get various different instruments there. So maybe there's going to be an advance in the kind of latency which there has been with Android. I don't know, we'll see. But interesting development. I'd quite like to get hold of one actually, but yeah, I don't think I will just yet. You can get them in the UK and the US only, I think. I know. Does this appeal to you, Dave, or you kind of, you were talking about getting away from Apple. Now you can buy into another mega conglomerate.
Yeah, Google are my least. No, sorry, I have no real opinion on this. I got to this topic quite late. It looked cool. Reminded me of when a certain company was trying to brand computers. A certain MI company was trying to brand computers, but didn't have an operating system, so they couldn't get them at the right price. But other than that, sorry.
No. Okay, fair enough.
Nothing.
I don't know if there'd be any possibilities of developing. Okay, right. Let's have a look at the next topic. I don't know if you get the chance to check out the new Donald Fagen album, Sunken Condos, which has just come out. Well, it's not just come out, but it hasn't been out all that long. I think I've got a short video I can probably play if I talk over it, because this is Letterman National TV, which I probably don't want to get busted for on YouTube. So if I'm rambling, it's purely so that I don't get fingerprinted. So this is Donald Fagen on the Letterman show, and it sounds pretty damn close to what's going on in the album. And it's your classic. Mark, I can see Mark is grimacing at this. It's all minor ninths and. So there's a bit of Donald Fagen playing the Rhodes there. I know, Gaz, you brought this up because I know you're a fan of the kind of production, and it does sound pretty good, but it doesn't half sound like it could have been made in the same year as Nightfly.
Kind of, although
musically, perhaps.
Musically, yeah. Steely Dan I use Steely Dan, the Asia album, and actually the song Asia really as my default studio kind of comparison song in a way, because of how beautifully recorded it is. And Steely Dan in many ways represent that kind of pinnacle of polished production, which I know that a lot of people struggle with a little bit. I always think Steely Dan is an interesting act because they balance this kind of absolute perfection with some of the darkest and most twisted lyrics in the whole canon of rock music, and I love that. I love that thing.
Those sort of Lotharios, aren't they? It's kind of, you can just imagine them sitting in sort of plush rooms, taking kind of really bizarre cocktails of Class A drugs.
But and I think what's been quite interesting in terms of production is that they used Roger Nichols, who sadly died a couple of years back, as their engineer on pretty much every project, and Gary Katz was the producer. But this album has actually been produced by kind of a new guy who's relatively young. I think he's 38 years old.
Michael Leonhardt.
Yeah, and he's like been playing trumpet in the touring Steely Dan since the mid-90s, but he's kind of stood up. He's like the producer of this project.
Well, not only that, but he's kind of played almost everything on it. I mean, he's got clavinet, vibraphone, percussion, trumpet, glockenspiel, Fender Rhodes, mini Moog mellophone, organ, accordion, flugelhorn, Wurlitzer, mellotron, percussion, background vocals, and he's also got a name, Earl Cook Jr., which is also him, and he played the drums. It's just that's a pretty bizarre. That's a pretty kind of high quality multi-instrumentalist there. If that's the sort of thing that kind of does it for you.
He does come from a very illustrious musical family. His father is a famous jazz bass player, Jay Leonhardt, and I think is obviously a great musician. I really like the production and the arrangement on this album a lot, and I think it's interesting that you mentioned that. Yes, it is kind of stuck in time in some respects. There's no dubstep element,
which is kind of good. I don't know. I mean, that could be good. I'd just like to maybe get what other people feel about this. Dave, am I right in thinking you were a fan of Steely Dan and that whole kind of thing at the time, or was it a bit too smooth for you?
I am. I've got very, mixed feelings on this. In fact, it's so funny because when this came out, I had a bit of a debate with somebody on Facebook. They called it Sunken Career. And I was like, oh, don't be so crass. And then there was this huge debate I had with somebody in the MI industry who said that the drums on this were programmed and some of the drums on Gaucho were programmed. And I was like, there is absolutely no way. If that's the case, if there were programmed drums on Gaucho, I will kill myself now. And I think he was hoping that there would be some programmed drums on Gaucho. I think there was one track, wasn't there? But to me, that whole Bernard Purdie shuffle and all the rest of it was brilliant. And I found Nightfly cold, whereas I love Gaucho. Asia, as Gaz says, is the kind of benchmark. I still play Peg on the piano every other day. And I was kind of intrigued by this. I realised how I'd missed some of those changes for the last few years. But then after about sort of 5 tracks, I was like, yeah, okay, enough.
There isn't much new. I mean, it's very, but I don't know if that's a bad thing. One thing that I thought was quite amusing, there's the track in there called The New Breed, which is essentially what it sounds like is Fagen talking of a scenario where he's moaning about somebody he knows, whether it's a lover or whatever, has been wooed by someone who knows all about some technology and .com and all this kind of new life, and he's kind of a bit miserable and peeved about it. And it sort of makes me understand and maybe what's going on with the whole album a little bit, because it's quite funny when you sort of listen to it in that context. But yeah, maybe not. I don't. Rich, are you a Fagen fan? I mean, does this kind of float your boat at all? Is this the sort of thing that does it for you?
In 1978, my band used to do a 45-minute set of Steely Dan music.
Right.
Which would have caused Mark to go running to the next town, I realized. But
I'm saving Mark till last because I have a feeling he will not be.
I downloaded this morning and played it, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more as it went along, and I can't decide if that's because I was getting used to it or if I like the songs in the second half better than I like the songs in the first half. In general, it's extremely well done and bluesier than I would have expected in general in terms of the structures. He still does like to cram all 12 chromatic tones into every chord in one form or another, and I have to admire that about the man, even though it's not something I like to do in every chord. And it was fun. I need time to absorb it some more.
Yeah, there's a lot there, I suppose. I mean, I've listened through it a couple of times, and I'm just sort of feeling a little bit.
I have to say, I've listened to it 20 times now, at least.
Ah, okay.
So, and
why would you do that?
Apparently, the drums were played and looped on Sunken, not programmed, according to the chat room. Sonic's 9.
Some of them were obviously looped.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to.
And I guarantee you, pretty much all of it is gridded.
Mark, I would like to come to you now.
I'm going to be extremely kind, actually.
Oh.
Because I could be absolutely scathing about it, but I'm sitting amongst a panel of
Steely Dan fans.
People. 1, 2, 3, 4 other people. 3 other people. I can't count. 4 other people who all seem to like this. And you know what? When I was like 17 or 18, I absolutely hated the Carpenters, and my mum used to play it all the time. It used to drive me nuts, and I was kind of force-fed the Carpenters, I suppose. And now I absolutely love Karen Carpenter's voice. I think it's like she's just got the most gorgeous sound. So when I first started working with Duran, the sound engineer, Mr. Davey Moore, insisted on playing Ruby Baby to check the PA every single day. And that would have resulted in me throwing things around and screaming, "Turn this effing shit off!" And everybody, all the Americans, looking absolutely bewildered because they all thought it was great. So, I don't know. Maybe come back to me in 20 years' time when I've grown up and I might like it. But it just seems, I don't know. It doesn't have any soul for me. Sorry.
I think you're totally entitled to that, and I must admit, I think if this was the sort of thing I didn't like, this would be almost the essence of the stuff I don't like. It's in its purest form. This is it, if you see what I mean. And I can understand how you might feel about that. I've only listened to it a couple of times. I mean, sonically, and it sounds like there was a number of, there's quite a lot of live keyboards on there, I think. And it would be I like to think that perhaps as much of it was played in takes and then assembled as much as possible. But I don't know whether that's the case or likely to be.
His previous solo album, Morph the Cat, which came out in 2006, was all recorded to tape. And I remember Donald Fagen in interviews around that time sort of saying, don't need any of this fancy stuff. Just let's,
a tape sounded way better then, though, didn't it?
Yeah, well, I can understand that.
It still doesn't, actually.
But that doesn't that kind of... I'm just wondering whether or not, I don't know how you would produce somebody like Donald Fagen, being as he's got the kind of musical genius of the size of a planet, and any suggestion you might make might appear to be kind of insignificant and worthless. I don't know. It must be quite an interesting dynamic. I mean, I don't know what he's like to work with, but I mean, he's obviously very focused on the way that he wants to present his music, in as is referenced by the fact that this sounds very much of the Donald Fagen mode. There's nothing different to my ears about the musical content, which is I was a little bit disappointed by.
As far as people who've been in big bands, who leave big bands and then go on to do like really important solo things, I have to say that I definitely prefer Donald Fagen to Phil Collins.
I think that is probably a compliment. And it should be taken as such. So yeah, that's very big of you, Mark. I think I probably do too, but that's another story completely. Sunken Condos available now. We're hoping that we might be able to get a chance to talk with Mr. Leonard. Actually, Gaz has contacted him, and there may be a possibility that he'll come on and talk about the production of the record, which would be really interesting. Yeah. Because the other thing is at the time, Steely Dan records were considered to be the pinnacle of production. It was that and Little Feat and those kind of things were really just sort of the kind of, large band with lots of brass and lots of things, really quite amazingly, what's the word I'm looking for? They were they were the pinnacle of production of the time, I suppose. I don't know if you'd agree with that. And I suppose it brought up another question, which we could sort of tack on to the end of this, which was really kind of, what is the last record or track that you bought that you actually thought about the production and thought, oh, that's really good, rather than the production actually being the track, which is kind of the case in sort of dance, where there's less about the song and the structure and more about the sound and that side of things.
Interesting.
Anybody got an answer to that? Dave, quick, save me. Have I just hit a tumbleweed moment? Or is it irrelevant? Plan B.
That was the last album that I bought, where I kind of really, really sat and analysed the production value of it.
Right.
No doubt. No doubt's hella good. I really liked that song, and then after I decided that I liked the song, I started to think, hang on a minute, there's something really clever about this, and then I sort of started to analyse that. And maybe the Cardigans album as well, I really like that.
Didn't Spike Stent mix hella good?
Probably, if Spike Stent mixes anything, it's going to sound brilliant, isn't it?
It's going to sound a hell of a lot like a lot of smacking the two-bus compressor on the SSL as well. But he's very good at that. I don't know, Rich. How about you? I mean, do you get the opportunity to listen with that degree of, to stuff that you're not working on?
Oh yeah, sure.
Got anything you care to contribute to?
The last thing I bought was the new John McLaughlin album. The thing before that was the new album by Chick Corea and Gary Burton. I downloaded Fagen's this morning just so I could speak about it today.
Do you think? I mean, do you think that the production is kind of
Mark O'Connor, Yo-Yo Ma, and Edgar Meyer. I just downloaded recently.
Do you think that? The production seems to have been. It's become blurred against it's almost, well, certainly in contemporary pop and dance, it's more important than anything else really. Whereas on tracks like this, it's sort of perhaps more about how the project was managed. Do you think, or is that perhaps a bit too much of a generalization?
I'm not even sure what that distinction is. I don't know how to respond to the question.
I think production is eating people's ability to be musicians, actually, way more so than it ever has done in the past. So when people come along and sing and then like vocode everything, it's like, hang on a minute, why did they do that? I actually want to hear I know we had that thing about Adele the other week when we were talking about the Bond tune and the fact that she was singing out of tune, but I'm starting to like the idea that people could sing
imperfection,
out of tune. I've started downloading lots of Indian music. So I've just downloaded an album by a man called Asad Ali Khan, which I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right or not. Because I just put something on Last FM and it came up. And for like the first 2 to 3 minutes of the track, it sounds like he's tuning his sarangi. And it's kind of like going right through the entire musical range. And I'm like going like, whoa, that's weird. And no production value at all. But in terms of like hearing... And oh God, that sounds awful. In terms of hearing music doing something that I'm not used to, in other words, not being stuck in that regimented, there's 12 notes in every octave kind of thing, it's really interesting to listen to.
So it's sort of more challenging from a musical point of view. But yeah, it's an interesting thought. I don't know whether or not the art of production, whether people kind of get to do it anymore because the budgets are sort of shrunken so much that...
In a way, like the greatest production ever, 1987, Talk, Spirit of Eden.
Okay.
Has still not been bettered.
Okay.
And it's kind of weird. And that album, we could do a whole show on, I swear.
Maybe we'll talk about that. I haven't listened to it for ages. Dave, you're looking animated. You would want to chip in.
Absolutely, definitely. No, completely agree with that. And I was just going to hold the book up for Gaz to see because I got it through the other day, and it's and it's absolutely awesome.
Oh, is there a book?
But the other thing that I just want to say is that another one of my absolute favourite bands is the Blue Nile, and you were saying about Steely Dan being the kind of pinnacle of production.
That's true.
Blue Nile guys were in a studio in Glasgow, and the Lynn, remember the Lynn turntable guys came in, heard a track of theirs, and decided to found a label in order to put this out so they could play it in their kind of audiophile showrooms. And then the band went on to become kind of so much more than just a audiophile showroom band. And they've had the two first albums, Walk Across the Rooftops and Hats, remastered. And I did download those. I bought them again and downloaded those, and they're brilliant because of the amount of space that's in.
It's very interesting because it's electronic, undoubtedly, but there is also enough analog musicianship and what have you around it that makes it kind of live and breathe. It's very
so Talk, which is so that Spirit of Eden album, and I absolutely adore those bands.
Spirit of Eden. Just quite quickly. Sorry.
I'm changing the topic. You keep talking.
It was recorded. What's dead fascinating about it? It came out in 1988. I guess it was recorded through 87. It was recorded onto digital tape, 32-track Mitsubishi. I think I'm right about that. But the thing that's very cool about it is all the front end was all pre-1967 preamps and microphones. So, and there's no digital reverb or anything on it. It's all kind of all very organic sounding. So you got that kind of mixture of digital and analog.
Interesting.
And it's just we're only coming to that now. That kind of
that approach.
That was it. That's what I wanted to say.
I think for me, probably the best produced or the best sounding production that still sticks in my mind is K.D. Lang Aunjanue. It's still, and it's not electronic in any way. It's totally acoustic. It just sounds absolutely incredible. I mean, it's one of the most brilliant sounding records I think of an age. Well, Dave, you've got the Talk. What is that? Is that about the recording of Talk, Dave?
It's everything about Talk. Signed by James Marsh. I'm just doing this so I can watch Gaz visibly wet himself live on air.
Is that a special? Is that a special book then? It's a special edition kind of thing.
Yeah.
I did a treatment for a Talk book about 3-4 years ago about the making of Spirit of Eden, but unfortunately there was too many obstacles. So when I heard that book was coming out, I was like, oh well.
I want to counter you with Japan.
Tin Drum.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely brilliant. Ghosts is just like the most
Yes.
fabulous track. But if you've never heard Rain Tree Crow, which is really Japan pretending to be a different band, absolutely, totally recommend that. And the production on it is absolutely brilliant.
And the Dolphin Brothers.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's just quite interesting how, what you take as your benchmarks of production, isn't it? And kind of how they go. But yeah, all good suggestions. I think before
one very quick thing. I came into some multi-tracks recently, and the production value has never been more, in fact, probably mastering has never been more exemplified. Staying Alive was one of the master tracks that I came into. And without that tough production, it just sounds, and mastering, it sounds like, when you strip it back, it sounds like a kind of slightly dodgy country song.
Wow. I'd love to hear that. That's a brilliant, brilliant production.
And now we've got to plug Dave Robinson.
Oh, yes. No, I was going to say that. There was one other thing, because it had the same stuff as, when you're listening to, we had a multi-track of KC and the Sunshine Band. I forget, Get Down Tonight, because we remixed it and did a terrible house treatment in the 90s, for which I apologise now. But the multi-track, the vibe was great, but the sound of it, I mean, they did so much in the mix, and how the hell they managed to do that, because it sounded sort of nothing like the record when you push the faders up, apart from the fact that it was all in the right order and, it sounded, like it was played properly. But yes, we should plug Dave Robinson. Dave Robinson said he couldn't make it here this week, but he's actually playing tonight as part of the Daphne Aramics exhibition, playing a live gig at the Science Museum. He and Martin Swan of the Vile Electrodes are appearing as composers versus capacitors, doing a 35-minute set of live electronics in a Tangerine Dream orbital vein. For those who want details, he's playing a bass station driving a Minotaur. Meanwhile, he's got MPCs, a master clock, a couple of samples of Daphne Oran saying things like music, electronics in a posh 50s voice. That was my attempt. That's not actually her, you might have guessed. And driving Asylum Iron drum machine. If you want to go and have a listen, it's free. It's on at 8:15 tonight at the Science Museum in London, England. So a bit short notice, but you've got time if you're in London or just outside. There's DJing and other stuff too. Yes, and so there we go. I think that's right. Do you know anything more about this, Dave Spears, or is that about cover it? I did read out his words verbatim, so I'm guessing that should cover it. So yeah, good on you, Dave. It was nice to see. I wish we could be there, actually, see Dave doing a gig. I don't think the last time I saw Dave even sat behind a keyboard was when he did the Top 20 Greatest Synths and was showing us the D50. And there's some great outtakes of him trying to find parameters in the sort of ridiculous menu system. So it was very funny. So anyway, I guess unless there's anything anybody wants to add, that's pretty much it for this week. I want to say thank you to everybody for joining us, and to those in the chat room. We had a fulsome, a fulsome number of people. Please do come again next week and every week when we can make it. I'll try and let you know if it's not going to happen. But generally, week by week, you should also, as the technology's been working, be able to see this up on YouTube a bit later on. And I also wanted to say hello and thank you to the folks that I saw at a music production show in London. At the Emirates Stadium in London on Friday. A large number of people came up and said hello, which was really nice to hear. So thanks for taking the time to say hi and for continuing to watch and listen to our stuff. So anyway, we'll say thanks very much to Mark Tinley, reclining there.
Sorry, lounging.
Mark, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate that.
You're
and
very welcome.
Your opinions and points always welcome. So thank you very much for joining us.
Somebody in the chat room said Bill Laswell, and I was going to agree with that as well. And
as a producer, or was he a bass player?
Yeah, but as a producer, he's brilliant. He did the ambient reflections of Bob Marley and dub, which is another one of my favourite records, and I totally recommend that you go and buy that as well. So thank
Okay,
you.
no, we'll check that. Thanks. I'll try and get. So if you can send me links, then I can try and get all this stuff in the show notes if possible. So thanks very much, Mark. And we'll go back
Very
to Dave Spears over there in sunny. Well, it's dark out there now, isn't it? Over wherever you are,
sunny
Dave.
middle of nowhere.
Sunny middle of nowhere.
Sunny middle of dark middle of nowhere. There's a film crew outside. They're filming Molly Moon. Anyway,
Molly Moon.
I probably shouldn't have said that.
I know it's probably
Yeah.
NDA, but yeah, Dave, G-Force Software makes of fine instruments and Reason rack extensions. Thank you very much for joining us too.
Thank you.
And now we come down to the second row, just purely because that's where they are in the Skype topography. We'll say thank you very much to Gaz Williams. If Gaz speaks, then I can get him. See if I can get which window he jumps into.
Yeah, I've been checking out Trash 2 by Isotope over the last few days. Just wanted to mention that because it's just new out and it's been blowing me away. It's absolutely brilliant. If you want to kind of just download the demo, check it out. It's amazing. I've been doing all sorts of wild and wacky stuff with it, and I just wanted to mention that because whilst it was hot, yeah, it's brilliant. I've been putting, if you just want to DI a guitar in and you want to do something and like much more fundamental kind of tweaking, brilliant.
Okay, all right. So Isotope Trash 2, is that? Yep. Do check it out. Thanks for the tip, Gaz. And we'll also say thanks to Rich Hilton, who's, as we said, joined us finally back online and all back together. Got all his damp clothes dried out from the Hurricane Sandy attack. And I'm guessing back to work now. Is it are you going to have to catch up on a load of projects that got postponed? Well, I'm guessing the studio. Was the studio all right? I don't know if it was.
It's all right, but yeah, we do have some work to do.
Okay. Well, I won't keep you any longer. I know that limousine or perhaps the jet ski is waiting to take you to work now.
Yes, right. The canoe.
The canoe. Anyway, Rich, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, we'll see you all next time. And that was Sonic Talk number 293 for the 28th of November. Once again, thanks to Yamaha for sponsoring the show. And go check out their apps. They've got tons of them.
Has Dave just fallen off?